The killer whales around the Iberian Peninsula of Spain and Portugal are fascinating. When you talk to people about orcas, they'll typically think that you're talking about southern residents, or bigs, or the pack ice orcas that are known for knocking seals off with waves. The Iberian population is well known for, unfortunately, a different reason. However, to really understand why they're famous, we need some context. So we need to find out who these orcas are, what they eat, and where they live. So before I dive into this video, I want to give some shouts and recognitions. This has to date been my hardest ever video to research for. I reached out to many orca experts, many organizations, and the response I got was frankly amazing. Everyone that I reached out to seemed to be willing to help. Firstly, I want to thank Atlantic Orca Working Group, also known as GTOA, and also at times during this video I will be referring to them as Orca Iberica, because that's their URL. They provided me with some permissions to use later on in the video for images, and also a lot of the information about these orcas I am going to be referring to stuff on their website. They're a leading conservation force for these orcas. Some other shouts I want to give is thank you to Rob from WDC, Monica from Orca Cave Institute, and Rebecca from Cornwall Wildlife Trust. Now, I asked several questions to experts from these organizations, and while sometimes they might not have the response, they always knew where to point me in the right direction when researching for this video. So I want to say a massive thank you to them. I also want to give an additional separate shout out to FIRM. FIRM are the Foundation for Information and Research on Marine Mammals. And what they do is they operate around the Strait of Gibraltar and they combine research and whale watching. And they're big advocates of responsible whale watching. I want to give a massive thank you to them because they have provided me and allowed me to use footage and photos during the video. And I'll use the same numbering system that I used in the last orca video, where you see a number in the caption on screen, you look in the description, there'll be more information on that. Now, fortunately, these orcas have a lot of organizations that are backing their corner, like FIRM. The fate of the Iberian orcas is strongly tied to their preferred prey type of bluefin tuna. This is not uncommon to the southern residents, with their need to supply themselves on Chinook salmon. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the orcas were not doing so well, and this was due to the overexploitation of the bluefin tuna by fisheries. Fortunately, quotas and fishing limits led to the tuna population bouncing back within a period of 15 years, which is pretty fast by my estimates. Although the recovery of tuna isn't a sign of how quickly orcas can recover. See, the problem with orcas is that they are large cetaceans that have a very long calving interval. In fact, they have one of the longest gestation periods of any mammal, of 15 to 18 months. And because of the long calving interval, which we'll get onto a little bit later, because they don't just have calves continuously, there is some period of time where they don't, their recovery is going to take longer than the tuna will. That being said, the population seems at least stabilized in the orcas. Now, to hunt bluefin tuna, you need to know what bluefin tuna are. These tuna are around 170 centimeters or 5.5 feet. These tuna are also very fast and agile, so the orcas have to be very precise to be able to catch these fish. But if there's one thing orcas can do better than any other predator on the planet, it's adapt a hunting strategy to catch their preferred prey. We have seen this in countless places in the world. We have seen this in Patagonia in Argentina. We have seen this in pack ice orcas in Antarctica. Now, remember that these orcas have to be precise, and that these tunas are definitely not your smallest type of fish. Sometimes they don't actually hunt them at all. Sometimes it's just free food on a fishing line. The Iberian orcas have been observed doing what is referred to as depredation. Depredation within these orcas is when, instead of expending a lot of energy to hunt these very difficult to catch tuna, they decide it's just easier to take them off fishing nets. It's free food. With increased fishing quotas, there are more fishermen out there, and therefore more opportunities to grab a free meal for the orcas. We will talk about the implications of this a little bit later on. Now, this geography section will be quite a short section, because the geography doesn't really make too much of an impact for these orcas, because they are not bound by a range determined by geographical features. Iberian orca movements are entirely determined by the migrations of the bluefin tuna. These orcas will follow the tuna from the Strait of Gibraltar all the way to Cornwall in the UK. Now, I should state that not all individuals go from Cornwall to Gibraltar. This is just the range of the whole population. There are some that will stop towards the coast of Portugal and not even go to Gibraltar, and those are typically the ones that will go up to Cornwall in the UK. Now, these orcas have been seen in the Bay of Biscay in France on occasion, but there's very little data on the French side, and it's possible that they're quite far out to sea and not easy to find. Honestly, there's just not that much data at all. Now, acoustics. Weirdly, for an orca population, this is actually going to be a very short segment as well. In my research, I only found a singular acoustic study on these orcas, and this was performed by the University of La Laguna in late 2025. And they only came up with a small data set from which they were able to infer 4 distinct call types, scientifically denoted as IO01, IO02, IO03, and IO04. Now, you don't have to remember these designations or even understand them. The next video I do is going to be about the northern residents, and when I talk about the northern residents, because Orca Lab is the main body of research for them, and a lot of Orca Lab's studies is on acoustics. For the next video, I'm going to do a very, very big deep dive into orca acoustics, just as a whole, and that'll be applicable to all orca populations, pretty much, in some way or the other. Now, this pilot study was performed near the Strait of Gibraltar, where the ambient noise is very high due to human activity, including sonar-based noise. Is one of the busiest channels in the entire world, shipping channels that is. Anything that wants to exit the Mediterranean either has to go by the Suez Canal or by the Strait of Gibraltar. But this study has shown that passive acoustic monitoring can be achieved on these orcas. Now, this one is going to be a longer segment because it's on social structure. And as always, to begin talking about the social structure of a population, our initial thing to do is check the available IDE catalogs and how frequently they are maintained. Now, before researching this video, I did not know anything about this population or how well studied it is. In some regards, the scientific methodology is very similar to those applied to the infamous southern residents. Although this is very unsurprising, as Michael Bigg's work has become fundamental framework to most, if not all, modern orca-related studies. Now, in the Bremer Bay video, I talked about the reasons why you might want to use a system for Biggs over what we use for the southern residents. However, the IDing system for the Iberian orcas is the same as with southern residents, albeit with a slightly different notation. Now, this system does work for the Iberian orcas. The Iberian population has 6 groups defined by the ID catalogue as communities. They are called communities within the ID catalogue, so that is why I'm using this term. These communities have a letter from A to F, and these 6 communities do occasionally mix. A 3-digit incremental number is then assigned in order of birth to these orcas. Now, I mentioned in the Bremer Bay video that this system does have its limitations when working out social structures, because it's hard to know who's related to who just by the numbers, unless it's a population like the southern residents who are tracked yearly. So we just have records of like who's related to who. However, with the Iberian orcas, there is a study that is annual and that's been going on for the last 15 years. So conclusions can very feasibly be made about lineage and family structure. However, since these orcas are migratory, they follow the bluefin tuna, it's possible that they might be spotted only once a year. And if a new calf is spotted, knowing who the calf's mother is may be quite a bit less certain than, for instance, the southern residents, where they're seen multiple times during the year. And if a calf is observed within the southern residents, the Centre for Our Research will be on the water very soon to catalogue it. But even then, sometimes the Centre for Our Research can't work out who the mother of a new calf is, even days after it's born. For example, the time of writing this script, L129 was spotted for the first time, but it's unclear whether it's L55 or L103's calf. The Iberian Orca ID catalogue also catalogues orcas who are not known to be parts of the population, speculated to be a transient variant. Now, the ID catalogue does not specify that they are of the transient ecotype, but they use the word transient, possibly to refer to them as being nomadic in nature. I'll also note here that all these communities seem to be matrilineal. Occasionally small subgroups will form with younger males, but this is likely to search for food, and these subgroups do not last for long. By the way, I needed some clarification whilst writing this video on whether community A was matrilineal, so I want to give a massive thank you to one of the marine biologists over at Firm for answering that question for me. Now, earlier on we mentioned about calving interval, and the calving interval from 2011 to 2023, according to Esteban et al. In 2025, was 8.3 years, which is a long time. This means that a reproductive female will only have a calf once in every 8.3 years on average. With generous estimates, this might mean an average female can only have 3 or 4 calves during her reproductive lifetime. Compare this to some big orcas in the Northwest Pacific are having 8 calves during their lifetime. So orcas experience menopause, and typically females can be reproductive from their teen years up into their 40s. Past their 40s is almost unheard of, but not impossible. This is not even counting the mortality rate of calves. If you account for 3 to 4 calves in a female's lifespan as being optimistic, and accounting for calf mortality rate, breeding age female mortality rate as well is a factor to include, and the fact that some of these calves may be males, which, while they're important for population size and the gene pool, population growth is mostly limited by reproductive success from female orcas. With all this in mind, then you might understand how a population of only 40 to 50 living individuals has made the IUCN Red List of critically endangered. Now, I imagine one of the reasons why you likely clicked on this video is probably for this section. Now, I purposely left this section to last because I feel it's very important from a conservation point of view to realize these are wild animals, and a critically endangered population of wild animals at that. Where educating someone's perceptions of who or what these orcas are might make a difference to help protect their survival. Now, I'm just going to state here for the record that I can't be unbiased on this subject. I will try my best to specify when something is my own opinion, my own theory, or whether it's a wider theory or even fact. My own personal opinion is that these interactions, the orcas do not present a malicious intent towards humans. I believe that these are intelligent animals who are interacting with items in their environment as play and to hone their hunting skills. To this date, no orca has ever killed a human in the wild, and I don't think they ever will. And for this reason, I will, for the rest of the video, refuse to use the word attack, because I don't think that these interactions with boats should be considered an attack, because an attack refers to as an intention to harm, which I fundamentally disagree with here. At worst, I will be referring to them as disruptive interactions with boats. Now, before we can even try and understand why these interactions may be occurring, we need to look at the data. Initially reported, it was juveniles that would have these interactions with boats first. Initially, it was reported that it was juveniles and one adult female that were having these interactions with boats before any of the others. And with it being juveniles, this could potentially raise the possibility of this being social learning. And orcas are very, very adept at social learning. And the more this behavior goes on, the more this might be social learning, regardless of the reason why it happened initially. These juvenile orcas might be learning to interact with boats this way without really knowing why they're interacting with them this way. Now, orcas in the past have copied each other, such as when one year the southern resident killer whales adopted salmon as hats. While this could have been a fashion trend, that would be anthropomorphizing the issue. A more likely explanation as to why this caught on is that in a year of abundance of food, it might be that orcas decide to carry it as a snack for later. That being said, it was a behavior that spread and that vanished just as quick as it started. If we apply this to the Iberian orcas, this leaves the possibility that this behavior came from curiosity and then passed on through social learning. So the majority of boats interacted with in this manner are recreational sailing boats. This points to a potentially strong argument against the assertion that this is a malicious act, because if it was with malicious intent, why would they interact only with one boat and not the others? Well, mostly with one boat and not the others. The leading theory is that this behavior is a form of play. The demographic of the orcas involved in this behavior suggests this. They're mostly juveniles. And orcas are a species with almost unparalleled amounts of social learning within the animal kingdom. So the boat rudders, being an object in their environment, may seem like a toy to the younger orcas. And due to the social learning, this could easily become a trend, such as with the salmon hats with the southern residents. But if it is play or a trend, we have to ask, how is this possible? Because in the animal kingdom, animals don't expend energy for nothing. This is why, for instance, if you've got a cat, your cat will speak to you, meow, but cats typically don't make a lot of noise when they're out in the wild. Animals are typically very energy efficient. So this play behavior has to have some purpose. Now, play in animals can have multiple benefits. It can help with communication, it can help strengthening social bonds, and it can even also help with refining motor skills. However, the next theory that I'm going to present also gives all these benefits, but more so. So an alternate theory that has surfaced somewhat recently is that perhaps these interactions are a practice exercise in grabbing prey. The demographic would also suggest this to be the case as well, and the specialization of interactions on a particular type of boat also could point to this. This might be the perfect shape for them to practice grabbing bluefin salmon, bluefin tuna. They predate upon rather large prey that moves very quickly, and when they hunt, they need to be precise to actually make a kill. Practice definitely makes perfect, and we see this in other populations of orcas around the world when sometimes they will practice certain techniques. For example, orca mothers in Argentina would teach their offspring how to go onto beaches to hunt sea lions. I saw I saw a documentary about this where a mother orca would take her two calves into a sheltered part of the beach where there's no waves or tidal forces because it was kind of protected on one side, and then she would practice in a bit more of a controlled environment. Acai orcas also have been observed risking the escape of prey just so that younger orcas can practice their technique in grabbing the seals off the ice floe. I've also seen a video online, which was a drone footage. It was about an 8-minute drone footage just following this small matriline of 3 orcas in New Zealand, where the mother was leading two juvenile orcas, and she was looking all the way here, left, right, center, always looking for stingrays. She knew how to find and hunt these stingrays, but when she found a stingray, she would just sit back. She would not get involved. She would let her offspring do the actual hunt so that the offspring could get practice, and she would also allow them to practice prey sharing after. Now, what do I believe about this? Now, my belief is that these two theories are not mutually exclusive. I believe to some extent that both these theories act in combination. Interacting with rudders can be fun for young orcas, but can also benefit when they are hunting fish, because this play is also practice. As I mentioned earlier, this is all speculative. The truth is, we just don't know. Now, in an attempt to reduce rudder damage to boats and also disencourage the orcas, Orca Iberica has published recommendations to boaters in the event that they encounter these orcas. They also have an app that will help as well. Now, I'll mention a bit from my part about why they recommend the most important thing. The most important thing, let go of the rudder, leave it to try. Because these orcas have been known to, when they're playing with the rudder, if you put some resistance on the wheel, they're more likely to put resistance back. They might see it as a game more, and it also makes it easier for the rudder to actually break. These are recommendations that are applied not just to Spain, but also to France and Portugal as well. Now, one real and pressing threat to these orcas is partially linked with these interactions with vessels, but also to depredation as well. Most people on boats will not try and harm the orcas, but there are a few that do. There have been videos of people throwing flares at them, and the violent actions of people may harm or even kill some of the orcas. Now, I want to take this moment to talk about a big orca, known as T46, also known as Wake. She was from the Northwest Pacific. During the capture era, she was captured, but later she was released from the nets, and then she wasn't seen in the Salish Sea for another 15 years after that. She unfortunately passed away in 2023. From when she was released to when she passed away, she has become instrumental to the population size of the Bigs population in general. Today, she is currently survived by 6 known offspring, with an additional female that's also suspected to be her daughter. 3 of her offspring are males, who are traveling with their suspected sister after T46 passed away. As of March 2026, her eldest surviving daughter has 7 surviving offspring of her own as well as 5 grandcalves. T46C, another daughter of T46, has 5 surviving offspring. Finally, her other daughter, T123, has 3 surviving offspring. T46, one whale that could have easily been taken to a marine park or died, went on to produce either directly or indirectly 27 or 28 currently surviving orcas. Now, put this into the context of a critically endangered population, such as the Iberian population. Just one orca harmed or killed could be a T46. That can make an enormous difference for recovery, and one orca lost can also severely weaken the potential gene pool. It's a population of about 50 individuals at best. Now, research into why orcas interact with boats in this way and keeping the best guidelines up to date is very important. What genuinely worries me is what happens to public human perception if one day a boat sinks and the worst happens and someone drowns. This is why research and guidelines for captains is so crucially important, particularly for the Iberian orcas, both for the people and for the orcas. Now, when it comes to depredation, that's a lot more difficult to solve. While the tuna population has bounced back in a big way, quotas have increased, and while due to depredation this actually means the orcas are getting more food, if the bluefin tuna end up getting overexploited again, we have already seen the damage this can do to the population. And furthermore, the more frequent depredation becomes, the less the orcas will hunt on their own, and the less practice they will be able to get in hunting. This may affect hunting success rates. If the theory of using boat rudders as hunting practice is the case, then one thing I personally would be very interested to know is whether there is a correlation between depredation and the number of boat interactions. Now, the one thing that the Acoustics study showed is that boat traffic is also a threat towards these orcas. Boat strikes and noise pollution are the main consequences of this. Sound, particularly, will harm the orca's ability to find prey due to an orca's reliance on echolocation and their reliance on hearing those clicks that they send out and hearing the return of those clicks. Their range is varied, so this is mostly an issue for the orcas that frequent the Strait of Gibraltar. But the Strait of Gibraltar is one of the biggest maritime choke points in the world, so this is a complicated issue to really solve. Now, under the IUCN Red List, the Iberian population is listed as critically endangered, and they are also protected under both Spanish and Portuguese law. As well as distance, speed, and position restrictions for boats, the Spanish law, which is a royal decree, prohibits activities that kill, harm, or disturb whales and dolphins, as well as prohibiting touching the animals, throwing food, drinks, objects, or substances at the animals. It's also illegal to separate the animals, to block them, and it is also prohibited to make loud noises to scare them. On the Portuguese side, I could not find too much about the restrictions. They seem to be a little bit softer, but I don't want to jump to the conclusions if this is not the case. Okay, so I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Closing thought, I just want to leave you with a photo on screen that was provided to me by Firm. If you like this video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We will have these videos coming out every few months. We also do whale news on the channel once a month. We also do an orca watch where we look at orcas from around the world, but mostly the Northwest Pacific region. And we kind of give updates on them. And we also do a podcast monthly. So I want to start a bit of a discussion in the comments. I want to know, is there anything from this video that you learn about these orcas? Did you know anything about them before aside from the interactions with boats? I want to hear how well known everything to do with these orcas are. But yeah, thank you for watching and have a fantastic day.